What if everything you're holding on to is keeping you from peace? Welcome to Buddhist Insight's journey. 2 hours of 11 stories woven with the Buddha's wisdom designed for peaceful sleep. Simply let the words wash over you. Tonight you'll hear of a wealthy merchant who loses everything and discovers what cannot be lost. A monk who learns wisdom from seeds in darkness. A potter whose shattered bowl reveals unexpected beauty. And a traveler with only enough light for the next step. Share where you're listening from our global Sangha spans the world. If you drift into sleep, that's exactly right. Let your body find comfort. Let us begin. The merchant's empty hands. The merchant stands on the shore at dawn, his fine silk robes torn and heavy with salt water. Behind him, the sea is calm now, as if the storm that destroyed his ship never happened. He watches a piece of carved teak, part of his vessel's deck, drift past in the gentle waves. Then another piece. Then, a bolt of silk, once worth more than a farmer's yearly wages, now just sodden fabric, tumbling in the surf. For 20 years he has sailed these waters. 3 ships he owned, each one larger than the last. His warehouses in the capital city overflowed with spices from the southern islands, jade from the mountain kingdom's pearls, harvested by divers who could hold their breath for impossible lengths of time. Merchants across the land knew his name. When he walked through the marketplace, people stepped aside, bowing. Now he owns nothing but the breath moving through his lungs. He touches his chest, feeling for the small leather pouch he always wore beneath his robes, the one containing his grandfather's jade seal, the symbol of his family's trading house. Gone. He reaches for his belt, where he kept a purse of gold coins for unexpected expenses. Gone. Even his shoes, fine leather from the northern provinces, have been claimed by the sea. The sun rises higher, warming his face. He should feel devastated. He should be on his knees weeping for all he has lost. Instead, he feels something unexpected lightness. As if he has set down a burden he has been carrying so long he forgot it was there. He begins walking inland, his bare feet sinking into sand, then finding the harder ground of a coastal path. Each step feels strange. For 2 decades, every step he took was calculated. This meeting will bring profit. That journey will open new trade routes. This alliance will secure my position. Now, he walks simply because the path is there, because his feet carry him forward, because there is nowhere else to go. By midday, he reaches a small village. It is nothing like the grand cities he is accustomed to, just a cluster of wooden houses. A well in the center, fields of rice stretching toward low hills. An old woman sits outside her home, sorting through a basket of vegetables. She looks up as he approaches. "You look like you've had a difficult journey," she says. Her face is weathered, her hands gnarled from years of work, but her eyes are kind. "I was in a storm," he says. "My ship." "Ah." She nods, understanding everything from those few words. "You'll be hungry then. Sit." She disappears inside and returns with a bowl of rice and vegetables, a cup of water. She does not ask his name. She does not ask if he can pay. She simply gives. The merchant stares at the bowl. When was the last time someone gave him something without wanting something in return? Every meal in his former life was a negotiation, a business dinner, a strategic alliance. Every gift came with expectations. "Thank you," he says, and his voice cracks on the words. He eats slowly. The rice is simple, plain, but it tastes better than any feast he can remember. "There's a farmer down the road," the old woman says when he finishes. "Chen. He's getting old, needs help with the harvest. If you're looking for work." Work. The merchant almost laughs. He has never worked with his hands in his life. He has people for that, had people for that. But what else is there to do? He finds the farmer in the fields, a man with a sun-darkened face and strong shoulders, bent over the rice plants. The merchant approaches, suddenly aware of how soft his hands are, how useless he must appear. "I heard you might need help," he says. The farmer straightens, studying him. "You don't look like a field worker." "I'm not, but I can learn." Something in the farmer's face softens. "All right. Can you start now?" The work is harder than anything the merchant has ever done. His back screams in protest. His hands, used to holding nothing heavier than a writing brush or a cup of wine blister within the first hour. The sun beats down mercilessly. By evening, every muscle in his body aches. But there is something else too. Something he has not felt in years. When he bends to the plants, his mind is simply there with the plants. When he carries water, he is carrying water. Nothing else. No calculations about profit margins. No worries about competitors. No fear of losing what he has, because he has nothing left to lose. The farmer pays him in rice and a place to sleep in the small shed behind his house. The merchant lies on the straw mat that night, his body exhausted, and sleeps more deeply than he has in 20 years. Weeks pass, then months. His hands stop blistering and grow calloused. His back grows stronger. The other villagers accept him without question. They do not know he once owned ships, and they do not care. They know him only as the man who helps with the harvest, who carries water for the old woman who is learning to fix roof thatch. One evening, after the day's work is done, he sits by the edge of the rice field watching the sunset. The sky turns gold, then orange, then deep purple. He remembers how he used to collect gold coins, jewelry objects. He would count it, touch it, feel its weight, and call it wealth. Now he watches gold pour across the sky, more gold than he ever owned, and he cannot hold even a single ray of it. Yet somehow he feels wealthier than he ever did. He begins to laugh. Softly at first, then louder. The farmer passing by stops and looks at him with concern. "Are you all right?" The merchant wipes tears from his eyes. Tears of laughter, not sorrow. "I just realized something. All those years I thought I was building security. I thought if I just had enough ships, enough gold, enough warehouses, I would finally feel safe. But I never did. Every coin I earned made me more afraid of losing it. Every ship I bought gave me one more thing to worry about. I was carrying a weight heavier than any cargo." The farmer sits down beside him. "And now I have nothing." The merchant spreads his hands, showing his empty palms. "And I am free." The farmer nods slowly. "There's an old teaching," he says. "The Buddha spoke about this. He said that all things in this world are impermanent. They arise and they pass away like waves on the ocean. And he said that when we cling to these impermanent things, when we grasp them and say, 'This is mine, this will make me happy, this will keep me safe,' we create our own suffering." The merchant listens, the words settling into him like seeds in soil. He taught that we should hold things lightly. The farmer continues, "Enjoy them while they're here, but know they will change. Everything changes. The only thing that doesn't change is change itself." The merchant thinks of his ships, his gold, his reputation all gone in a single storm. He thinks of how he fought so hard to hold on to them, to protect them, to make them permanent. and how that fight exhausted him, consumed him, made him forget what it felt like to simply be alive. Do not cling to what must change, the farmer says, quoting the Buddha's words. For this clinging is the root of sorrow. They sit in silence as the last light fades from the sky. The merchant understands now. His ships did not hold his happiness, they held his prison. The gold did not buy security, it bought fear. In losing everything, he has discovered what could never be taken. The simple joy of being alive, the warmth of human kindness, the freedom of empty hands. He sleeps well that night and every night after. Years later, when travelers pass through the village, they sometimes ask about the field worker with the gentle smile, the one who seems so content with his simple life. The villagers shrug. They know him only as a good man, a hard worker, someone who helps without being asked. They do not know that he once measured his worth in gold and jade. They do not know that he lost everything in a storm. And he never tells them, because that man, the merchant who owned ships and counted coins and never smiled, that man drowned in the storm. The man who survived is someone new, someone lighter, someone free. The teaching the farmer shared that evening stayed with the merchant for the rest of his life. Not as words to memorize, but as truth lived in every moment. We spend so much energy trying to hold on to what was never ours to keep. The Buddha saw this clearly, that grasping creates the very suffering we're trying to avoid. True wealth is not what we possess, but the peace we carry within untouched by fortune's changing tides. The merchant watched the soil fall from the abbot's hand, watched it return to the earth. Everything you had was always changing, the abbot said. Your ships were being worn down by salt water from the moment they were built. Your house was aging from the day it was constructed. Your fortune was flowing like a river, never the same from one moment to the next. But you didn't see this. You saw your wealth as solid, permanent, unchanging. You grasped it tightly, trying to hold it still. And when it flowed away, as water always does, your hands were left empty and you felt betrayed. The merchant looked at his empty hands. He thought about all the years he had spent accumulating, protecting, worrying about his wealth. How he had lain awake at night, calculating profits, fearing losses. How he had treated his fortune like a child that needed constant watching, constant protection. I was trying to hold water in my fists, he said quietly. Yes, the abbot replied. And the tighter you squeezed, the faster it ran through your fingers. They sat together as the afternoon light began to soften. The merchant felt something loosening inside him. Some tight knot he had been carrying for so long he had forgotten it was there. Your ships are gone, the abbot said. Your house is gone. Your gold is gone. These are facts. They cannot be changed. But your suffering that comes not from the loss itself, but from fighting against the truth that everything changes. You are suffering because you believe the story that things could be permanent. That story was always false. The merchant thought about this. He thought about the storm that took his ships. Storms come and go. He thought about his creditors taking his house. Debts are paid and released. He thought about his friends disappearing. Relationships shift and change. Even this grief I'm feeling, he said slowly, even this is temporary. Everything is temporary, the abbot said. Your grief will change, just as your joy changed, just as your fortune changed. This is not sad news. This is liberating news. Nothing is stuck. Nothing is frozen. Everything flows. As evening approached, the abbot invited the merchant to stay for the night. They ate a simple meal of rice and vegetables. The merchant realized he had not eaten in days, but he had been so consumed by his thoughts, he hadn't noticed his hunger. After the meal, the abbot showed him to a small room with a sleeping mat and a single blanket. The merchant looked around at the bare walls, the simple furnishings. He had once owned a bedroom with silk curtains and carved furniture with thick carpets and gold fixtures. That room was gone now, and this room, simple as it was here. He lay down on the mat. His body ached from days of walking, from sleeping on the ground. But his mind felt different, quieter, clearer. He thought about the teaching the abbot had shared. All conditioned things are impermanent. Everything that arises must pass away. His wealth had arisen, and it had passed away. His grief had arisen, and it too would pass away. Even his life would arise and pass away like a wave on the ocean, like a flower in the garden. For 20 years he had been fighting against this truth, trying to make permanent what was always flowing, trying to freeze the river, and the effort of that fight had exhausted him more than any storm ever could. Now lying in this simple room with nothing to his name, he felt something unexpected. Not happiness exactly, but a kind of peace, a kind of relief. He had spent so much energy trying to hold on to things, trying to prevent change, trying to control what could never be controlled. And now his hands were empty, and there was nothing left to hold on to, and the relief of that was almost overwhelming. He understood now. The teaching settled into his bones, into his breath. Everything changes. Fighting this creates suffering. Accepting this creates peace. His ships were temporary. His gold was temporary. His house was temporary. His reputation was temporary. Even his identity as a wealthy merchant was temporary. All of it had been like clouds forming and dissolving in the sky, like flowers blooming and fading in the garden. And he, the one watching all of this arise and pass away, he too was changing moment by moment. The man who had arrived at the monastery gates that morning was not the same man lying here now. That man was already gone, replaced by this one who would be replaced by another tomorrow. As sleep began to find him, the merchant felt a deep gratitude for his loss. It had brought him here. It had broken open his tight grip on the world. It had shown him what the Buddha had seen thousands of years ago, that everything flows and peace comes not from stopping the flow, but from flowing with it. Outside, the night sounds of the monastery settled around him. Crickets singing, wind moving through the trees, the distant sound of a bell marking the evening meditation. All of it arising and passing away moment by moment, like his breath, like his thoughts, like everything that had ever existed. He slept that night more deeply than he had in years. And so, the merchant discovered what many of us spend our lives avoiding, that everything we have is temporary, and trying to make it permanent is what causes us to suffer. The Buddha saw this clearly. He called it impermanence, but we might simply call it the nature of life. Everything changes. Nothing stays the same. Not our possessions, not our relationships, not our bodies, not even our thoughts. We often live as the merchant did, building our lives on the belief that we can create something permanent, something that will last forever. We accumulate and protect and worry, trying to freeze the river, trying to hold the clouds in place. And when change comes, as it always does, we feel betrayed, as if life has broken some promise it made to us. But life never promised permanence. That was a story we told ourselves. The merchant's loss was real. His grief was real. But his suffering came from believing that what he had built should have lasted forever. When he released that belief, when he accepted that everything flows, the suffering began to dissolve. Not because his circumstances changed, but because his understanding changed. Perhaps we too are holding on to things with tight fists, trying to keep them from changing, exhausting ourselves with the effort. And perhaps, like the merchant, we might find peace not in succeeding at this impossible task, but in finally letting our hands open, in allowing things to be what they are, temporary, flowing, always changing. In this understanding, there is a deep rest. Not the rest of having everything we want, but the rest of no longer fighting against the nature of existence itself. The monk who planted seeds. The young monk sits beneath the Bodhi tree, his eyes squeezed shut, his jaw clenched so tight it aches. 3 years he has been at the monastery. 3 years of meditation, of chanting, of following every rule, of trying so hard his whole body trembles with effort. And still enlightenment feels as far away as the stars. He opens his eyes and looks around at the other monks. There is Brother Ananda sitting perfectly still, his face serene as a mountain lake. There is old Master Sujata moving through the garden with such grace it seems his feet barely touch the ground. Even young Brother Kavi, who arrived at the monastery only last year, seems to have found some peace that eludes him. What is wrong with me, the young monk thinks. Why can't I do this? He tries again, closes his eyes, focuses on his breath. In, out, in, out. But within moments, his mind is racing. Did I chant correctly this morning? Am I sitting in the right position? Why does my knee hurt? Am I enlightened yet? How about now? Now. His meditation teacher, Master Dhamma, has told him to be patient. The path unfolds in its own time, the old master says. But the young monk does not want to wait. He wants to achieve, to accomplish, to reach the goal. He has always been this way, even as a child. He could not simply play. He had to win. He could not simply learn. He had to be the best. Now he is bringing that same desperate striving to his spiritual practice, and it is destroying him. One morning after another failed meditation session, he finds Master Dhamma in the monastery garden. The old teacher is kneeling by a freshly tilled plot of earth, holding a small cloth bag. "Ah, young one," Master Dhamma says, looking up. "Good timing, come here." The young monk approaches, his shoulders slumped with frustration. Master Dhamma opens the bag and pours seeds into the young monk's palm. They are tiny, dark, hard. "Plant these," he says simply. "Master, I don't understand. I came to learn meditation, not gardening." "Plant them." Master Dhamma repeats, his voice gentle but firm. The young monk sighs but obeys. He digs small holes in the soft earth, drops in the seeds, covers them, pats down the soil. Master Dhamma hands him a watering can, and he waters the plot. Then he stands brushing dirt from his robes. "Now what?" he asks. "Now you wait." "Wait for how long?" Master Dhamma smiles. "Come back tomorrow, water them again, then wait some more." The young monk wants to argue, but something in his teacher's eyes stops him. He bows and returns to his meditation cushion, more frustrated than ever. The next morning, he waters the seeds. Nothing has changed. The earth looks exactly as it did yesterday. He checks the next day. Still nothing. On the third day, he cannot help himself. He kneels down and carefully brushes away some soil to see if anything is happening beneath the surface. "What are you doing?" Master Dhamma's voice makes him jump. "I just wanted to see if the seeds are growing, Master. It's been 3 days and nothing." "Stop." Master Dhamma kneels beside him, gently covering the disturbed soil. "You are digging up what needs to be left alone. Seeds do not grow because you watch them. They do not grow because you worry about them. They grow because you create the right conditions, good soil, water, sunlight, and then you trust the process." "But how do I know they're growing if I can't see anything?" "You don't know. That is the point. You have faith." The word sits uncomfortably in the young monk's chest. Faith. He is not good at faith. He is good at effort, at striving, at making things happen through sheer force of will. Every day, Master Dhamma continues, "You will water these seeds. You will not dig them up. You will not check on them constantly. You will simply tend them and trust." The young monk wants to protest, but he nods instead. Days pass. Each morning, he waters the plot. Each morning, he sees nothing but dark, damp earth. His mind churns with doubt. What if the seeds are dead? What if I planted them wrong? What if I'm wasting my time? But he keeps watering, keeps waiting. On the 8th day, he arrives at the garden plot and stops. There, pushing through the soil, are tiny green shoots. So small he almost missed them. So fragile they look like they might disappear if he breathes too hard. He stares at them, something shifting in his chest. You see, Master Dhamma appears beside him as if he has been waiting for this moment. All that time, you thought nothing was happening, the seeds were working. In the darkness where you could not see, roots were growing down. The seed was breaking open. The plant was gathering strength. The transformation was happening, you just could not see it. The young monk kneels, looking closely at the shoots. "I wanted to dig them up so many times." "I know. And if you had, you would have destroyed the very thing you were trying to help." Master Dhamma's voice is kind. "This is what you do with your meditation practice. You sit for 10 minutes and then check, am I enlightened? Yet you practice for a week and dig around in your mind. Where is my progress? Where is my peace? You disturb the very process you are trying to nurture." The young monk feels heat rise in his face. It is true, all of it. The Buddha taught about right effort. Master Dhamma continues, "Do you know what that means? Working hard, trying my best? No. Right effort is not about force. It is about balance. It is like tuning a stringed instrument. If the string is too tight, it breaks. If it is too loose, it makes no sound. Right effort is finding the middle way between striving and laziness, between grasping and giving up." The young monk watches a tiny ant crawl across one of the green shoots. The plant does not try to grow. It simply grows. The ant does not try to walk. It simply walks. The Buddha also taught this, Master Dhamma says. He said, "Little by little, moment by moment, the wise remove their own impurities as a silversmith removes dross. Not all at once, not through force, little by little." But Master, how do I know if I'm making progress? The same way you knew these seeds were growing. You trust the process. You create the right conditions. You practice meditation. You live ethically. You cultivate wisdom. And then you let go of the outcome. The fruit ripens in its season, not when you demand it. Over the following weeks, the young monk tends his garden plot every day. He watches the shoots grow into seedlings, the seedlings into young plants. Some days, the growth is visible. Other days, nothing seems to change. But he learns to trust that even when he cannot see it, growth is happening. He begins to approach his meditation practice the same way. He sits each morning not to achieve enlightenment, but simply to sit. He follows his breath not to force his mind into stillness, but to gently return his attention when it wanders. When he notices himself, checking for progress. Am I peaceful yet? Am I getting better? He smiles and lets the thought go, the way he learned to stop digging up the seeds. Months pass, then a year. One morning, he sits down for meditation and realizes something has shifted. He cannot say exactly when it happened. There was no dramatic moment, no flash of light. But somewhere along the way, without him noticing, his practice has deepened. His mind still wanders, but it returns more easily. His body still aches sometimes, but he does not fight it. He still has difficult days, but they do not devastate him. He is like the plants in the garden, growing slowly, steadily, in ways too subtle to measure day by day, but undeniable over time. In the garden, the plants he seeded have grown tall and strong. They have flowered. They have produced their own seeds. Master Dhamma shows him how to harvest these seeds, how to plant them for the next season. This is the cycle, the old teacher says. Planting, tending, trusting, harvesting, then planting again. Your practice is the same. Each day you plant seeds of awareness. Each day you tend them with patience. Some days you see results. Some days you see nothing. But if you trust the process, if you do not dig up the seeds with your impatience, eventually there is a harvest. And from that harvest, more seeds to plant. The young monk bows deeply. Thank you, Master. Do not thank me. Thank the seeds. They taught you what I could not. That night, the young monk sits in meditation. His mind is quiet, not because he forced it to be quiet, but because he stopped trying to force it. His body is still not because he is holding it rigid, but because he allowed it to find its natural rest. He is not enlightened, he knows that. But he is no longer in a hurry to be enlightened. He is simply here now, breathing being, planting seeds in the dark soil of his awareness and trusting they will grow in their own time. Transformation happens in its own time. We cannot force a seed to sprout, cannot demand a flower to bloom before its season. Our task is not to control the outcome, but to tend the conditions with faithful presence. Growth happens in darkness, in silence, in the patient space between effort and surrender. This is enough. The potter's broken bowl. The potter's hands move across the clay like water shaping, smoothing, coaxing form from formlessness. She's been working on this bowl for 5 years. Not continuously, she's made hundreds of other pieces in that time, but this one has lived in her mind, in her dreams, calling to her until she got it right. And now finally it is perfect. She lifts it from the wheel, her breath held. The curve is flawless. The walls are thin as paper, yet strong. The proportions sing with balance. She has thrown thousands of bowls in her 40 years as a potter, but never one like this. Never one that makes her heart ache just to look at it. She carries it to the kiln with the tenderness of someone carrying a sleeping child. The firing takes 3 days. She barely sleeps, getting up throughout the night to check the temperature, to add wood, to whisper prayers to the fire spirits that they will be kind to her creation. When she finally opens the kiln and lifts the bowl out, she nearly weeps. The glaze has turned out even better than she imagined, a deep blue that shifts to green in certain light, with subtle crackling that looks like ice on a winter pond. It is without question her masterpiece. She carries it into her workshop, her hands trembling slightly. This bowl will go in the place of honor on the highest shelf, where the morning light will touch it first. Perhaps she will enter it in the imperial competition. Perhaps the emperor himself will see it and know her name. She turns toward the shelf, already imagining the bowl in its place. Her sleeve catches the edge of her work table. The bowl tilts in her hands. She tries to catch it, overcorrects, and watches in horror as it slips from her fingers. The sound of it shattering on the stone floor is the loudest sound she has ever heard. For a long moment, she cannot move, cannot breathe. She stares at the fragments scattered across the floor, a dozen pieces, maybe more. The beautiful glaze now just broken shards reflecting light in all directions. 5 years. 5 years of dreaming, planning, attempting, failing, trying again. 5 years of learning exactly how thin she could make the walls, exactly what temperature would bring out that particular blue. 5 years leading to 3 perfect days, and now 3 seconds that have destroyed it all. She sinks to her knees among the pieces. Her hands hover over them, but cannot touch them. If she touches them, it will be real. If she touches them, she will have to accept that her masterpiece is gone. The tears come then, hot and bitter. She is not a woman who cries easily. She has survived the death of her husband, the loss of her workshop, to fire years of poverty before her work began to sell. But this breaks something in her that she did not know could break. For 3 days, she cannot enter her workshop. She moves through her house like a ghost, eating nothing, speaking to no one. Her apprentice comes to the door worried, but she sends him away. She cannot face the clay, cannot face the wheel, cannot face the empty space where the bowl should have been. On the 4th day, hunger drives her to the market. She buys rice, vegetables, tea. On the way home, she passes an old woman sitting by the roadside begging. The woman's bowl is cracked, held together with wire. The potter stops, stares at that broken bowl, and something shifts in her chest. She goes home and stands at the door of her workshop for a long time before entering. The shards are still there, scattered across the floor where she left them. In the daylight streaming through the window, they catch the light, each piece a small mirror. She kneels down and for the first time picks one up. It is beautiful. Not in the way the whole bowl was beautiful, but in a different way. The edge where it broke reveals the layers of glaze, the texture of the clay beneath. She picks up another piece. This one shows how the blue shifts to green, the transition visible in a way it never was when the bowl was whole. She begins to gather the pieces, laying them out on her work table. She studies them the way she studied the bowl when it was whole. But now she is seeing things she never noticed before. The small imperfection in the glaze on this piece, she had thought the bowl was perfect, but it was not. The slight unevenness in the thickness here, her hand had wavered just for a moment, and she had not noticed. The bowl she thought was perfect was not perfect, and somehow that makes her love it more. She sits with the pieces for hours. At some point, her apprentice returns, peers through the door, sees her surrounded by shards, and quietly leaves a pot of tea before disappearing again. As evening comes, the potter begins to arrange the pieces. not trying to reconstruct the bowl, she knows that is impossible, but creating something new, a pattern, a design. She fetches her gold lacquer, the expensive kind she saves for special repairs, and begins to join the pieces. Not hiding the breaks, honoring them. The work takes weeks. She fits each shard carefully, filling the spaces between with gold. The pattern that emerges is nothing like the original bowl. It is flatter, more like a wall hanging than a vessel. But it is beautiful in a way the bowl never was. The gold lines trace the history of the breaking, turning destruction into design. The fragments catch light differently now, each piece telling its own story while contributing to the whole. When she finishes, she hangs it on the wall where the morning light will touch it first. Her apprentice comes to see it. He stands before it for a long time silent. "It's more beautiful than the bowl was," he finally says. "No," the potter says. "It's beautiful in a different way. The bowl was beautiful in its wholeness. This is beautiful in its brokenness." "Master, I don't understand. How can brokenness be beautiful?" The potter touches one of the gold lines gently. "When the bowl was whole, I thought it was perfect. I thought if I could just create this one perfect thing, I would finally be satisfied. I would finally be good enough. But perfection is a trap. It is something we chase, but can never catch, because it does not exist." She pauses, looking at the way the light plays across the fragments. The Buddha taught about this. He taught that all things in this world are imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete. He called it the truth of suffering. Not that life is only suffering, but that when we demand perfection from an imperfect world, we create our own pain. The apprentice nods slowly. "So we should not try to make beautiful things. No, we should make beautiful things. We should pour our hearts into our work, but we should not cling to them. We should not believe that our worth depends on creating something perfect, because nothing is perfect. Everything breaks. Everything changes. Everything ends." She gestures to the piece on the wall. In Japan, there is a practice called kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold. The philosophy behind it is that the breakage and repair are part of the object's history, not something to hide. The piece becomes more beautiful for having been broken. The apprentice studies the golden lines. So the breaking was necessary. I would not say necessary, but it happened. And I had a choice. I could spend the rest of my life mourning what was lost, or I could work with what remained. I could curse the brokenness, or I could honor it. That night, alone in her workshop, the potter sits before her creation. She thinks about all the years she spent chasing perfection, all the pieces she destroyed because they were not quite right, all the times she berated herself for small mistakes, tiny flaws that no one else would ever notice. She thinks about the old woman with the cracked begging bowl, still using it, still finding it useful despite its imperfection. She thinks about her own life, the losses, the failures, the moments she wished she could erase. And she wonders, what if those broken places are not flaws, but simply part of the pattern? What if the cracks are where the light gets in? The Buddha taught that we suffer when we resist reality, when we demand that things be other than they are. He taught that peace comes not from achieving perfection, but from accepting imperfection with compassion, not giving up on beauty or excellence, but holding them lightly, knowing that all things arise and pass away. that all things break eventually, and that this breaking is not failure, but simply the nature of existence. The potter understands now. Her masterpiece was never the perfect bowl. Her masterpiece is this moment sitting in her workshop at peace with what is broken, finding beauty, not despite the cracks, but because of them. Perfection is the dream that keeps us from seeing the beauty of what is. We spend our lives trying to avoid the breaking, to hide the cracks, to present a flawless surface to the world. But the breaking comes anyway. And when it does, we have a choice to see it as ending or as transformation. The gold in the cracks is the wisdom that comes from accepting what we cannot change. The river's teaching. The scholar arrives at the river with 3 bags of scrolls and a head full of questions that will not let him sleep. He has studied at the great monastery for 7 years. He can recite every sutra from memory. He can debate the finest points of doctrine, can explain the differences between the various schools of thought, can quote the commentaries on the commentaries. But he has no peace. His teacher finally told him kindly but firmly to leave the monastery for a while. "Go sit by the river," the old master said. "Stop reading about water and go look at it." So, here he is, at a river he has passed 100 times but never really seen. He sets down his bags with a sigh. Even now, even here he brought the scrolls, just in case he has time to study, just in case he thinks of something he needs to look up. He cannot help himself. He sits on a flat rock near the water's edge. The river is wide here, flowing steadily toward the distant sea. The sound of it is constant, not loud, not soft, just present. He tries to meditate, but his mind immediately begins its usual chatter. Did I understand that passage correctly? What did the master mean when he said, "If the nature of mind is emptiness, then how?" He opens his eyes in frustration. This is useless. He should go back to the library, where at least his restlessness has a purpose. But he stays. Something keeps him there on the rock, watching the water flow past. A branch floats by, carried by the current. The river does not push, it does not resist it. The branch simply moves with the water turning slowly, following the path of least resistance. The scholar watches it disappear around a bend. Then he notices a large stone in the middle of the river. The water meets, it divides around it, continues on. The stone has been there a long time. He can see how the water has smoothed its surface, worn away its sharp edges. But the stone does not move, and the water does not fight it. They coexist, each being what it is. The scholar finds himself leaning forward, watching more closely. A leaf lands on the water's surface, is carried downstream. A fish jumps, creating ripples that spread outward and fade. The water receives everything, branch, leaf, fish, sunlight, shadow, and releases everything. It holds nothing. It grasps nothing, yet it is always full. Hours pass. The scholar does not notice. He is watching the way the water flows around obstacles, how it finds every crack and crevice, how it moves downward without effort, following its nature. When the riverbed narrows, the water speeds up. When it widens, the water slows. The water does not decide to do this. It does not think about it. It simply responds to conditions. A farmer appears on the opposite bank, leading a water buffalo down to drink. The animal wades into the shallows, and the water accepts it, flowing around its legs. When the buffalo drinks, the water gives itself freely. When the buffalo leaves, the water returns to its shape as if nothing had happened. The scholar realizes his breathing has slowed to match the river's rhythm. His mind, usually racing ahead or circling back, has settled into the present moment. He is simply here watching water flow, and for the first time in years, he is not trying to figure anything out. As the sun begins to set, painting the water gold and orange, an old woman comes down to the river with a bucket. She fills it, lifts it to her head, and walks back up the path. The scholar watches her go, then looks back at the river. The water she took is already replaced. The river is not diminished. He thinks about all the scrolls in his bags, all the words he has memorized, all the concepts he has tried to grasp and hold. He has been trying to carry the river in buckets to possess the water to own the teaching. But the teaching is not in the words. The teaching is in the flowing. The next morning, he returns to the river. And the next. And the next. Each day he brings fewer scrolls. Each day he sits longer. Each day he notices something new, not because the river changes, but because he is learning to see. One day, he brings nothing but himself. He sits on his rock and watches a piece of wood floating downstream. It encounters a stone and gets stuck wedged against the obstacle. The water continues to flow around it, patient, constant. Days pass. The scholar watches. Slowly, gradually, the water wears away the edges of the wood shifts. It slightly works at it without force or frustration. One morning, the wood comes free and continues downstream. The scholar laughs out loud. He has been that piece of wood stuck rigid, fighting against the flow. And he has been trying to free himself through effort, through force, through more studying and more striving. But the river teaches a different way. That evening, his teacher appears on the path. The old master sits down beside him without a word. They watch the river together as the light fades. Finally, the scholar speaks. "Master, I think I understand now why you sent me here. Tell me, I have been trying to force understanding, like trying to push water uphill. I have been grasping at teachings like someone trying to catch water in their fists. The harder I grip, the more it escapes." The teacher nods. "The Buddha taught what he called the middle way. Do you remember? Yes, the path between extremes, neither indulgence nor harsh denial. That is the intellectual understanding. But have you seen it?" The scholar looks at the river. The water does not force its way forward, but it does not stop either. It is not aggressive, but it is not passive. It simply flows, responding to what is finding the natural path. Yes, and when it meets an obstacle, it does not fight. It does not give up. It flows around. And over time, without violence, it shapes even the hardest stone. The teacher picks up a small pebble and tosses it into the water. They watch the ripples spread and fade. The Tao Te Ching says, "Nothing in the world is softer than water, yet nothing is better at overcoming the hard and strong." The Buddha taught the same wisdom in different words. He said we should be like water, adaptable, flowing powerful through gentleness rather than force. The scholar thinks about his 7 years of study, all that effort, all that striving. I have been trying to become enlightened through force of will. And has it worked? No. It has only made me more tired, more frustrated, more stuck. So what will you do now? The scholar watches the river for a long time before answering. I will stop trying to make the water flow uphill. I will stop trying to possess the teaching. I will simply practice, like the river practices being a river, not trying to be an ocean, not trying to be a lake, just flowing moment by moment, responding to what is. The teacher smiles. Now you are beginning to understand. Wisdom is not something you accumulate like scrolls in a library. It is something you embody like water, taking the shape of whatever contains it. It is not about knowing more. It is about being present with what is without resistance, without force. They sit in silence as stars begin to appear in the darkening sky, reflected on the water's surface. The river continues its ancient song, the same song it has sung for 10,000 years. The same song it will sing for 10,000 more. The scholar realizes he has been so busy studying the maps that he forgot to take the journey. He has been so focused on understanding the concept of water that he forgot to drink. All the scrolls in the world cannot teach what this river has taught him in a few weeks of simply watching, simply being present. Before he leaves, he opens his bags and removes the scrolls. One by one, he sets them on the bank. He will return for them eventually, or perhaps he will not. It does not matter. The words are not the teaching. The teaching is here, in the flowing, in the yielding, that is stronger than force, in the softness that wears away stone. He walks back to the monastery with empty hands and a quiet mind. His teacher walks beside him, saying nothing because nothing needs to be said. The river has already spoken. True understanding arises not from grasping, but from allowing, not from controlling, but from harmonizing with what is. We spend so much energy pushing against the current, trying to make water flow uphill. But wisdom is learning to move with life, rather than against it, to respond, rather than resist, to flow like water around the obstacles we cannot change. In this flowing, there is rest. The weaver's knot. The weaver's fingers have moved through threads for 60 years, and they know the work without thinking. Warp and weft over and under the rhythm as familiar as breathing. She sits at her loom in the early morning light, working on what will be her final tapestry. She has planned this piece for a decade. It will depict the lotus rising from mud to bloom in sunlight, the ancient symbol of how enlightenment emerges from suffering. The colors are already chosen, arranged in baskets beside her deep browns, for the mud greens, for the stem and leaves, and for the flower itself, silk threads in shades of pink and white that she traded half her savings to acquire. This tapestry will be her legacy, the thing people remember her by when she is gone. Her hands move steadily, building the image thread by thread. The mud takes shape first, rich and dark. Then the water blues and greens interweaving. She works for hours each day, stopping only when her eyes grow too tired to see the threads clearly. 3 weeks into the work, when the lotus stem is nearly complete, and she is beginning on the leaves, her hands betray her. Her eyes too. She reaches for a green thread, but takes a brown one instead. She does not notice until she has woven it in, tied it off, moved on to the next row. When she finally sees it, a brown thread running through the green leaf, like a scar, her breath catches. No. She leans close, examining the mistake. To fix it, she would need to unravel hours of work, perhaps days. The threads above it are already locked in place, dependent on this row for their structure. To remove the wrong thread would mean undoing everything she has built since. Her first instinct is to do exactly that. To cut the threads, unravel the work, start again. She has always been a perfectionist. In 60 years, she has never sold a piece with a visible flaw. Better to destroy something than to let it be less than it should be. She picks up her cutting blade, But something makes her pause. Her hands holding the blade are shaking. Not from age, though age is part of it. From exhaustion. From the weight of a lifetime of perfection, of never allowing herself a single mistake, of destroying anything that fell short of her impossible standards. She sets down the blade and stands her knees protesting. She walks to the window and looks out at her small garden. It is wild now. She no longer has the energy to keep it neat. Flowers grow where they please. Weeds tangle with herbs. A vine has claimed the fence and is pulling it slowly toward the earth. It is, she realizes, more beautiful than it ever was when she controlled it. She returns to the loom and sits, but does not pick up the blade. Instead, she simply looks at the mistake, the brown thread running through the green. In the harsh judgment of her first glance, it was a flaw, a failure, a thing to be erased. But now, looking longer, she sees something else. The brown thread catches the light differently than the green. It creates a texture, an unexpected depth. It looks like a vein in a leaf, or a shadow, or the trace of an insect's path. It looks, in other words, like something real, like something that grew from earth rather than from an idealized image in her mind. She thinks about her life, the losses she has endured, her husband dead 20 years now, her daughter moved to a distant city, her hands growing weaker each season, the mistakes she has made, words spoken in anger that she can never take back, opportunities missed because she was too afraid of imperfection to try, years spent alone because she could not forgive herself for being human. If her life were a tapestry, would she unravel it because of these mistakes? Would she erase the difficult years, the painful moments, the threads that do not match her original design? And if she did, what would remain? She picks up the next thread, a green one, the right one this time, and continues weaving. The brown thread stays. She works around it, incorporates it, lets it become part of the pattern rather than a violation of it. Days pass. The lotus grows on the loom, rising toward light, and the brown thread in the leaf becomes less noticeable, integrated into the whole. Sometimes she forgets it is there. Sometimes she sees it and feels a small clench in her chest, the old perfectionist dying hard. But mostly she simply weaves. When the lotus flower itself begins to take shape, she works with special care. The pink and white threads are expensive, irreplaceable. She cannot afford a mistake here. Her hands move slowly, deliberately. Each thread is checked twice before it is woven in, but her eyes are old and her attention wavers. She ties a knot wrong, a small thing barely visible, but she knows it is there, and knowing it is there makes her fingers clumsy. She makes another small error, then another. She stops her hands in her lap and closes her eyes. She could unravel it all, start over, spend her remaining energy chasing perfection one more time. Or she could accept that this tapestry, like everything else in the world, will be imperfect, flawed, human. She thinks of something the Buddha taught, words she heard long ago from a traveling monk. All conditioned things are imperfect. This is their nature. When you understand this deeply, you are no longer troubled by imperfection. The monk had used a different word, dukkha, he called it. The truth that all things are unsatisfactory, incomplete, imperfect. Not as a cause for despair, but as a simple fact. Like saying water is wet or fire is hot. Imperfection is not a failure. It is the nature of existence. She opens her eyes and looks at her tapestry, at the brown thread in the leaf, at the small knots in the flower, at 60 years of work hanging on the walls around her pieces she kept because they met her standards, while dozens of others were destroyed for crimes of imperfection. And she wonders, what if the destroyed pieces were not failures, but simply honest? What if perfection itself is the flaw? The lie we tell ourselves about how things should be while ignoring how things actually are. She continues weaving. The lotus grows flawed and beautiful. When she finishes weeks later, she does not examine it for mistakes. She already knows they are there. Instead, she steps back and looks at the whole. The lotus rises from dark mud through blue-green water into light. The colors sing together. The composition is balanced. And yes, there is a brown thread in one leaf. There are small knots in the flower. The edge is not perfectly straight. It is the most beautiful thing she has ever made. Her neighbor comes to see it, a woman who has bought several of her tapestries over the years. She stands before the lotus for a long time silent. "It's different from your other work," she finally says. The weaver's heart sinks. Different means flawed. Different means not good enough. "It's more alive," the neighbor continues. "Your other pieces are beautiful, but they're almost too perfect. They look like they were made by a god, not a person. This one looks like it was made by someone who understands what it means to grow from mud. Someone who knows that beauty and imperfection are not opposites." After the neighbor leaves, the weaver sits before her tapestry as the light fades. She thinks about the Buddha's teaching about how all things are interconnected. Every thread in the tapestry depends on every other thread. The brown thread that she thought was a mistake is holding up the threads above it. The knots she wanted to hide are part of the structure. If she removed them, the whole piece would unravel. Her life is the same. Every moment, every choice, every mistake and triumph, all of it woven together into a pattern she could not see while she was making it. The difficult years taught her compassion. The losses taught her to cherish what remains. The mistakes taught her to be gentle with herself and others. If she could go back and remove the painful threads, she would also remove the wisdom they brought. She would unravel the very thing that makes her who she is. Life's tapestry includes every thread, every knot, every imperfection. We spend so much energy trying to hide our mistakes, to present a flawless surface to the world. But the knots are not flaws. They are connections. The unexpected threads are not errors. They are the places where life surprised us, changed us, made us real. The pattern's beauty emerges from the whole, not from perfect parts. The beggar's gift. The beggar sits in his usual corner where the market meets the temple steps, his wooden bowl resting on the ground before him. It is empty, as it often is. He owns 3 things in this world: the bowl, a torn blanket that was once blue, and the patience that comes from having nothing left to lose. His name is sorrow, though few people know it. To the merchants hurrying past, to the pilgrims climbing the temple steps, he is simply part of the landscape. A fixture, something to step around on the way to somewhere more important. He does not mind. He learned long ago that invisibility has its own kind of freedom. The morning is busy. Vendors call out their wares. Children chase each other between the stalls. A wedding procession passes musicians playing, everyone dressed in bright colors that hurt his eyes with their beauty. Sorrow watches it all with quiet interest. He has nowhere to be, nothing to do. Watching is enough. Around midday, when the sun is high and hot, he notices a commotion across the street. A crowd is gathering. He hears someone crying out, not in anger, but in pain or fear. Saro stands his knees protesting and makes his way across the dusty road. An old man has collapsed in the street. Well-dressed, expensive robes rings on his fingers. A merchant probably, or perhaps a minor official. His face is grey, his breathing shallow. The crowd stands around him in a circle, but no one moves to help. Someone should fetch a doctor, a woman says. Is he drunk? A man asks. Don't touch him, another warns. If he dies, they might blame you. Saro pushes through the crowd and kneels beside the old man. Up close, he can see the fear in the man's eyes. Not fear of death exactly, but fear of dying alone, surrounded by strangers who will not even touch him. It's all right, Saro says quietly. I'm here. He has nothing to offer. No medicine, no water, no way to summon help. His hands are empty, but he lifts the old man's head gently and settles it on his lap. He takes off his blanket, his only blanket, the one that keeps him warm on cold nights, and drapes it over the man's chest. The old man's eyes focus on him. His lips move, trying to speak. Shh, Saro says. Don't try to talk, just rest. The crowd continues to murmur. Someone says they should move him. Someone else says they should wait for the authorities. But no one comes closer. No one kneels down. They are all too busy, too important, too afraid of being involved. Saro holds the old man's hand. It is soft, uncalloused, a hand that has never done hard labor. A hand that has held money, signed documents, commanded servants. Now it trembles in Saro's rough palm like a bird with a broken wing. You're not alone, Saro says. He begins to speak softly about simple things, about the sky, how blue it is today, about the children he saw playing earlier, their laughter like bells, about the way the light falls through the temple gates in the afternoon, creating patterns on the stone. He talks about the first time he saw the ocean back when he had a different life, about his mother's garden, the jasmine that grew by the door, about a dog he once knew who would howl at the moon. Small stories, ordinary memories, nothing profound or important. Just the sound of a human voice, gentle and present, saying you matter. Your fear matters. Your pain matters. I see you. The old man's breathing begins to slow. His grip on Saro's hand loosens slightly. Some of the fear leaves his eyes, replaced by something else. Not peace exactly, but acceptance. A letting go. They sit like that for a long time. The crowd grows bored and begins to drift away. The market noise continues around them, buying, selling, bargaining, living. The world does not stop for one old man dying in the street. But Saro stops. Saro is completely, utterly present. As the sun begins its descent toward the horizon, the old man takes a deep breath and lets it out slowly. His eyes, which have been fixed on Saro's face, soften. He squeezes Saro's hand once gently, and then his grip relaxes completely. Saro sits with him for a while longer, even though he knows the man is gone. It seems wrong to leave immediately, as if the present still matters, even after the person has departed. Finally, he stands. His legs have gone numb from sitting so long. He looks down at the man, peaceful now, and realizes he never learned his name. He folds his blanket and places it over the man's face. Someone will come eventually. Family or officials or temple monks. someone will claim the body perform the rites, do whatever needs to be done. Saro's part is finished. He returns to his corner by the temple steps. His bowl is still there, still empty. He sits down, feeling the absence of his blanket. Tonight will be cold, but he finds he does not regret giving it away. A shadow falls across him. He looks up to see a young monk standing there, holding a bundle. "I saw what you did," the monk says, "for the old man." Saro shrugs. "I did nothing. I have nothing to give." "That's not true." The monk kneels down, setting the bundle beside Saro's bowl. "You gave him something no one else would. Not the merchants with their gold, not the officials with their authority, not even the family members who will come to claim him. You gave him your presence, your time, your care." The monk unwraps the bundle, a new blanket thick and warm, and a bowl of rice with vegetables. The Buddha taught about dana. The monk continues. Generosity. Most people think it means giving money or food or material things. And yes, those are forms of generosity. But the highest form of dana is the gift of fearlessness, helping someone feel less afraid, less alone. You gave that man the gift of dying with dignity, surrounded by kindness instead of indifference. Saro looks at the food at the blanket. "I only did what anyone would do, but no one else did it. Everyone else was too busy, too afraid, too concerned with their own affairs. You had the least to give in material terms, but you gave the most in human terms." The monk stands to leave, then pauses. The Buddha also said this: "Even if you offer just a cup of water with love, the merit is immeasurable. You offered your presence, your compassion, your willingness to sit with suffering. That is worth more than all the gold in the marketplace." After the monk leaves, Saro sits with the food and the blanket. He thinks about the old man, about the fear in his eyes that gradually softened into peace. He thinks about the crowd that surrounded them, but would not come close, afraid of being contaminated by suffering or death, or simply by involvement. He thinks about what he gave and realizes the monk was right. He gave the only thing he truly had: his attention, his care, his willingness to be present with another person's pain. And in giving it, he did not become poorer. If anything, he feels richer now than he did this morning. The Buddha taught that generosity is the first step on the path to freedom. Not because giving makes us holy, but because it loosens the tight fist of self-concern. When we give, we practice letting go. We practice remembering that we are not separate from others, that their suffering is our suffering, that their need is our need. Saro eats the rice, slowly savoring each bite. When he finishes, he wraps himself in the new blanket. It is soft and warm, but not warmer than the feeling in his chest, the knowledge that he was able to help, that his presence mattered, that even with empty hands, he had something to give. That night, he dreams of the old man, but the man is young again, walking through a garden. He turns and nods to Saro, a gesture of thanks, and then continues on his way. When Saro wakes in the morning, he finds 3 coins in his bowl. Someone left them during the night. Enough for food for several days. He picks up 1 coin, looks at it, then sets it back down. When a young mother passes with a hungry child, he offers them the coins. The woman hesitates, then accepts with grateful eyes. Saro's bowl is empty again, and he is content. True generosity requires no wealth, only an open heart. The greatest gifts we can offer are not things, but presence. The willingness to see another person's pain and not turn away to sit with suffering without trying to fix it, to offer the simple gift of not being alone. This costs nothing and gives everything. In this understanding, even empty hands are full. The archer's release. The student stands before the target, his third arrow of the morning already lying in the grass, 20 feet to the left of where it should be. His bow trembles in his grip. His shoulders are so tight they burn. Sweat runs down his back despite the cool morning air. He has been training for 8 months. 8 months of rising before dawn, of practicing until his fingers bleed, of studying every detail of form and technique. His stance is perfect. His grip is textbook. His breathing follows the exact pattern his teacher demonstrated. And yet, he cannot hit the target. Not cannot. He has hit it before occasionally, by what feels like accident. But he cannot hit it consistently, cannot hit it when it matters, cannot make his body do what his mind knows it should do. Behind him, his teacher sits beneath a cherry tree, silent as stone. Master Kenji has been watching for an hour without saying a word. The student can feel that silence like a weight on his back, making everything worse. He knocks another arrow, draws the bow. His arms shake with effort. He is trying so hard to do it right, to make it perfect, to finally prove he is worthy of his teacher's time. He releases. The arrow flies wide, disappearing into the bushes. The student's hands drop to his sides. His eyes burn with frustration that wants to become tears, but cannot not, here not in front of his teacher. He has failed again. He is always failing. Enough, Master Kenji says. The student turns, expecting dismissal, expecting to be told he does not have what it takes, that he should find another path, that some people are simply not meant to be archers. But Master Kenji is standing, walking toward him. The old man's face is calm, unreadable. "Give me the bow," he says. The student hands it over, grateful to be rid of it. Master Kenji stands before the target. He does not check his stance, does not adjust his grip, does not take a deep breath or set his shoulders, or do any of the preparatory movements the student has been taught. He simply raises the bow in one fluid motion, draws and releases. The arrow strikes dead center. The student wants to cry. Of course it is easy for the master. Of course perfection comes naturally to someone who has practiced for 40 years. But for him, for a beginner, it is impossible. Master Kenji turns to him. "Do you know why your arrows miss? My technique is wrong. I need more practice. I'm not strong enough, or your technique is perfect." Master Kenji interrupts. "That is the problem." The student stares at him, confused. "Come, sit." Master Kenji settles onto the grass beneath the cherry tree and gestures for the student to join him. "Tell me, what are you thinking about when you shoot?" "I'm thinking about my form. Making sure my elbow is at the right angle, my fingers are positioned correctly. My breathing is... and what else?" The student hesitates. "I'm thinking about hitting the target, about not missing, about not disappointing you." "Ah," Master Kenji nods. "And there is your problem. You are not shooting an arrow. You are fighting a war with yourself." "I don't understand." When you stand before the target, you are divided. Part of you is holding the bow, but another part is watching yourself hold the bow. Judging, criticizing, desperate for success, terrified of failure. You are trying to force the arrow to the target through sheer will. This is not archery. This is violence. The student feels something crack open in his chest. It is true. Every shot is a battle. Every release is a desperate attempt to control what happens next. "Watch," Master Kenji says. He stands, picks up the bow again. This time, the student watches not the target, but the master. Master Kenji's face is peaceful. His breathing is natural, unhurried. As he raises the bow, there is no tension in his body, no strain. The draw looks effortless, like a tree branch bending in wind. And at the moment of release, the student sees it now. There is nothing. No grasping, no hoping, no trying. Just release. The arrow strikes center again. "Do you see?" Master Kenji asks. "I am not trying to hit the target. I am not even thinking about the target. I have become one with the bow, the arrow, the target, and the space between them. There is no separation, no me and it. There is only this moment, this action complete in itself. But how do I do that? You cannot do it by trying. That is the paradox. The more you grasp for it, the more it escapes you. You must practice not to achieve, but to be present. Not to hit the target, but to release the arrow with complete attention and then let go of what happens next." The student takes the bow again. He stands before the target, and immediately his mind begins its usual chatter. Am I standing right? Is my grip correct? What if I miss again? "Stop," Master Kenji says gently. "You are already in your head. Come back to your body. Feel your feet on the earth. Feel the bow in your hand. Not thinking about these things, feeling them." The student tries. His mind quiets for a moment, then surges back with more thoughts, more worries. This is normal," Master Kenji says. "The mind wants to control, to grasp, to make things happen. Your practice is to notice this grasping and release it the same way you release the arrow. Again, days pass, then weeks. The student practices the new way, not practicing to hit the target, but practicing to be present, to release his grip on the outcome. Some days are worse than before. His arrows fly everywhere. His mind screams at him that this is foolish, that he is wasting time, that he should go back to trying harder. But he continues, and slowly something begins to shift. One morning, he stands before the target and realizes he is not thinking about his form. He is not worried about missing. He is simply there, bow in hand, arrow nocked. He draws without effort, the motion as natural as breathing. At the moment of release, there is no hesitation, no grasping, no desperate hope. The arrow flies true and strikes the center. He barely notices. He is already reaching for the next arrow, not because he is excited or proud, but because reaching for the next arrow is simply what comes next. He shoots again. Center. Again. Center. It is not that he has suddenly become skilled. It is that he has stopped interfering with the skill that was always there, waiting beneath his anxiety and striving. Master Kenji appears beside him. "Now you are beginning to understand." "I stopped trying," the student says, wonder in his voice. "Yes, the Buddha taught about this. He spoke of the middle way, the path between extremes. Not lazy, not aggressive, not giving up, not forcing. Like tuning a stringed instrument too tight and it breaks too loose and it makes no sound. You were pulling the string of your practice so tight, it was about to snap." The student nods slowly. He thinks about all the months of struggle, of trying to force himself into perfection. "I was attached to the outcome." Yes, attachment to outcomes is a form of suffering. The Buddha taught, let go of what has passed. Let go of what may come. Let go of what is happening now. Don't try to figure anything out. Don't try to make anything happen. Relax right now and rest. But if I don't try to make things happen, how will anything happen? Things happen on their own when you stop blocking them with your grasping. The arrow knows how to fly. The bow knows how to release. Your body knows how to shoot. Your job is not to make it happen, but to get out of the way. The student practices this teaching for months, not just in archery, but in everything. When he eats without thinking about what comes next. When he walks without planning his destination. When he sits in meditation, he sits without trying to achieve enlightenment. And gradually, he discovers that life flows more smoothly when he stops trying to control it. The target is hit more often when he stops desperately needing to hit it. Peace comes more easily when he stops chasing it. One day, Master Kenji tells him he is ready to leave to become a teacher himself. But I still miss sometimes, the student protests. Of course you do. Everyone misses sometimes. That is not the point. The point is that you have learned to release not just the arrow, but your attachment to where it lands. You have learned that the true target is not the circle of straw, but the state of mind that allows the arrow to fly freely. The student bows deeply. He understands now that his teacher has been teaching him not archery, but life. How to act without grasping. How to try without desperation. How to care about outcomes while not being enslaved by them. He picks up his bow one last time at this place, stands before the target, draws, releases. The arrow strikes center, but he is already walking away, already releasing even this moment, already free. Peace comes not from controlling results, but from releasing our grip on them. We achieve most when we stop desperately grasping for achievement. The Buddha taught that attachment to outcomes creates suffering, not because we should not care, but because we should care without clinging. Like the archer who releases the arrow and trusts its flight, we can act with full commitment while holding the results lightly. In this release, there is freedom. The gardener's winter. The gardener walks through her winter garden, bare branches reaching into grey sky, like prayers that have forgotten their words. Everything looks dead. The roses are nothing but thorny sticks. The perennials have collapsed into brown decay. The earth is hard and cold beneath her feet, refusing the touch of her spade. She has tended this garden for 30 years. 30 springs of planting, 30 summers of growth, 30 autumns of harvest. But winter always brings the same doubt, the same whisper of fear. What if this time nothing comes back? Her name is Amara, and she is 63 years old enough to know better than to doubt the seasons. But knowing and feeling are different countries, and she cannot seem to cross the border between them. She kneels beside what was last summer a magnificent rosebush. It produced blooms the color of sunset, dozens of them filling the air with fragrance. Now it looks like something that should be pulled up and thrown away. Dead wood. Useless. She reaches out to touch it, her fingers tracing the rough bark. To anyone passing by, this is death. But she has learned over 3 decades to trust what she cannot see. Beneath the surface, beneath the frozen earth, the roots are still alive. They are deepening, drawing strength from darkness. Inside these bare branches, next season's buds are already forming in secret, waiting for warmth. The garden is not dead, it is dreaming. But knowing this does not make winter easier. She stands her knees protesting and looks around at the barrenness. This year feels different, harder. She has been in her own winter for months now, ever since her husband died last spring. Since then, nothing in her life seems to grow. She goes through the motions of living, but inside she feels as frozen as the ground beneath her feet. She wonders if her own spring will ever come. A voice calls from the gate, "Amara." She turns to see her neighbor, young Priya, holding a basket. The girl is maybe 20, newly married, full of the kind of hope that Amara remembers having once, but can no longer find. "I brought you some bread," Priya says, coming into the garden. "I made too much and I thought..." She stops looking around at the bare garden. "Oh, it's so empty." "It's winter," Amara says, hearing the defensiveness in her own voice. "Of course, I just meant, I've never seen your garden like this. In summer it's so beautiful. I didn't realize it could look so..." She trails off embarrassed. That Amara finishes for her. I was going to say resting. Something in Amara's chest loosens slightly. That's a kinder word. Priya sets down the basket and walks to the rose bush Amara was examining. Will it come back? It looks so... It will come back. It always does. Amara hears herself say the words and wonders if she believes them. The roots are growing deeper right now. The plant is gathering strength for spring. This is necessary work even though we can't see it. How do you know? How can you be sure? Amara almost says experience or faith. But then she realizes she does not know. Not this year. This year, for the first time in 30 years, she is not sure of anything. "I don't know," she admits. "I just continue to care for it. I protect it. I wait." Priya looks at her with concern. "Are you all right, Amara? You seem..." "I'm fine. The lie tastes bitter. Just tired of winter." After Priya leaves, Amara sits on the cold bench and lets herself feel what she has been avoiding. She is not fine. She is lost. Since her husband died, she has been going through the motions, tending the garden, cooking meals, cleaning the house, but inside, she is frozen. Nothing grows. Nothing blooms. She is all winter and no spring. She thinks about pulling up the rosebush, starting over, planting something new that might have a better chance. But her hands will not do it. Some part of her, deeper than doubt, still believes in the invisible work happening beneath the surface. Days pass. She continues to tend the winter garden, even though there is little to do. She mulches around the dormant plants, protecting their roots. She prunes dead wood. She prepares beds for spring planting, even though spring feels impossibly far away. One morning, she finds a monk standing at her gate. He is old, his robes patched and faded, his face weathered but peaceful. "Forgive the intrusion," he says. "I am traveling to the monastery in the mountains and wondered if you might spare some water." "Of course." She brings him water, and because it is cold and he looks tired, invites him to sit in her small house for a while. He accepts gratefully. As he drinks, his eyes fall on the window that looks out over the garden. "You are a gardener," he observes. "I was. Now I'm just someone who tends dead things." He looks at her with eyes that seem to see more than she wants to show. "It is winter. Nothing is dead. Everything is resting. That's what I tell myself, but I don't believe it anymore." "Ah." He sets down his cup. "You are not just speaking of the garden." The tears come before she can stop them. She tells him about her husband, about the emptiness that has filled her life since he left, about how nothing seems to matter anymore, how she cannot find her way back to caring, to hoping, to believing that anything good will ever grow again. The monk listens without interrupting. When she finishes, he is quiet for a long time. The Buddha taught about seasons, he finally says. Not just the seasons of weather, but the seasons of life of the heart. He taught that all things arise and pass away. Spring comes then, summer, then autumn, then winter, and then spring again. This is the nature of all conditioned things. But what if spring doesn't come? What if I'm just stuck here? Spring always comes, but we cannot force it. We cannot make the seeds sprout by pulling on them. We cannot make the buds open by prying them apart. We can only tend the conditions and trust the process. I don't know how to trust anymore. Trust is not something you have or don't have. It is something you practice. Like tending a garden in winter, you do the work even when you cannot see the results. You protect the roots even when you cannot see them growing. You prepare for spring even when spring seems impossible. This is faith, not certainty, but faithful action in the face of uncertainty. He stands to leave, bowing slightly. Your garden will bloom again, and so will you. But both require winter. Without the dormancy, without the rest, without the invisible work that happens in darkness, there would be no strength for spring's abundance. Winter is not the absence of growth. It is a different kind of growth, deep, hidden, essential. After he leaves, Amara sits with his words. She thinks about the rosebush, about the roots deepening in darkness. She thinks about her own heart, about the grief that has frozen her in place. What if this frozen time is not wasted? What if something is growing in her that she cannot yet see? She goes out to the garden. The sky is heavy with clouds threatening snow. She kneels beside the rosebush and begins to work the mulch around its base, protecting it from the coming cold. Her hands are cold, her knees ache, but she continues. Not because she is certain it will bloom again, but because tending is what she knows how to do. Because faithful action is all she has. That night, it snows. In the morning, the garden is transformed white and silent and beautiful in a way she had forgotten it could be. The bare branches hold snow like blossoms. The frozen earth is covered in softness. She stands at her window, looking out, and feels something shift inside her. Not hope exactly, not yet, but something like willingness. Willingness to wait, willingness to tend, willingness to believe that beneath the frozen surface, invisible work is happening. Weeks pass, then months. She continues to care for the garden, for herself, for the small routines that keep her moving through the days. And then one morning in early spring, she sees it, a tiny green shoot pushing through the mulch at the base of the rose bush. She kneels in the damp earth and touches it with one finger, this small miracle. It is so fragile, so small, but it is alive. It survived the winter. It is reaching toward light, and she realizes she is too. Somewhere inside her, beneath the grief and the frozen places, something has survived. Something is reaching toward light. She does not know what will bloom from it, but it is enough to know that it is there, growing in the dark, preparing for its season. Not all growth is visible. The most profound transformations often happen in darkness, in waiting, in the apparent emptiness of winter. Our task is not to force the blooming, but to tend the conditions with patient faith, to protect what is dormant, to trust what we cannot see, to continue the work even when results seem impossible. Spring comes, not because we demand it, but because we remain faithful through winter's teaching. The shepherd's lost lamb. The shepherd counts his flock as evening falls, touching each sheep's head as it passes into the fold. 97, 98, 99. He counts again to be sure. 99. One is missing. Without hesitation, he leaves the 99 in the fold and heads into the darkening hills. His name is Dasan, and he's been a shepherd for 20 years. He knows these hills, knows the places where a sheep might wander, knows the thorny ravines where they get trapped. He searches through the night, his lantern a small star in the vast darkness. He calls, listens, moves on, calls again. The wind carries back only silence. As dawn breaks, he finds the lamb caught in a thicket of thorns, bleating weakly. Relief floods through him as he carefully frees it and carries it home on his shoulders. The 99 are safe in the fold waiting. The one is saved. All is well. But the next week, another lamb wanders. Dasan leaves the flock and searches. He finds it and brings it home. The week after that, another and another. He begins to realize that his constant rescues have taught the flock nothing about staying safe. They have learned that wandering has no consequences, that the shepherd will always come, that they need not be careful or stay together. He grows exhausted. His body aches from climbing hills in darkness. His eyes are red from lack of sleep. He cannot tend the healthy sheep because he is always searching for the lost ones. He cannot repair the fold, cannot strengthen the fences, cannot train his dogs properly. Everything suffers because he is always rescuing. One night, he collapses on a hillside, too tired to continue. He has been searching for 6 hours for a lamb that has wandered 3 times this month. His hands are bleeding from thorns. His feet are blistered. And he realizes with sudden clarity, this cannot continue. He is destroying himself, and he is not actually helping the sheep. When he finally finds the lamb in the same ravine as last time, he carries it home in silence. His relief is mixed with something else now. Something like anger or frustration, or a deep weariness that goes beyond the body. The next morning, his old teacher finds him sitting outside the fold, staring at nothing. Master Ravi has been a shepherd for 50 years. He taught Dasan everything he knows about caring for sheep. "You look like a man who has forgotten how to sleep," Ravi says, sitting beside him. "Another lamb wandered last night, the same one as last week, and the week before. And you went after it." "Of course I went after it. What else could I do? Leave it to die?" Ravi is quiet for a moment. "Tell me, how are the 99? Dasan blinks. "What? The 99 sheep that did not wander? How are they?" "They're fine, I suppose." "When? When did you last check them for illness? When did you last examine their hooves, their coats? When did you last spend time simply being with them so they know your presence and trust your guidance?" Dasan opens his mouth to answer and realizes he cannot remember. All his time, all his energy, all his attention has been focused on the ones who wander. "Your compassion is beautiful," Ravi says gently. "But compassion without wisdom is a candle in the wind. It burns itself out and helps no one. You are so busy rescuing the lost that you are abandoning the found." "But the Buddha taught about the lost sheep," Dasan protests. "About leaving the 99 to search for the one." about how every single life matters. Yes, every life matters, including yours, including the 99. The Buddha also taught the middle way, the path between extremes. You have gone to an extreme. You have made yourself into a permanent rescuer, and in doing so, you have made your flock into permanent victims who never learn to stay safe. Dasan feels something crack open in his chest. So what do I do? Just let them wander? Let them die? No. You build better fences. You teach the flock to stay together. You train your dogs to guard the perimeter. You create conditions for safety rather than endlessly rescuing those who refuse to learn. You still search for the lost, but you do not abandon the many for the one. You do not destroy yourself in the process. That sounds cold, unfeeling. Does it? Ravi picks up a stick and draws in the dirt. If you burn yourself out completely, who will care for any of them? If you die of exhaustion on a hillside, what happens to all 100 sheep? True compassion means caring wisely, sustainably, in ways that actually help, rather than simply making you feel like a good shepherd. Over the following weeks, Dasan makes changes. He repairs the fences, making them stronger. He works with his dogs, teaching them to circle the flock to keep the sheep together. He spends time with the flock each day, not just counting them, but being present with them, so they learn to follow his voice, to trust his guidance. And when a sheep wanders, he goes after it, but not immediately. He waits to see if it will find its way back. He lets natural consequences teach what his rescues could not. Some sheep learn, some do not. For those that do not, he makes difficult decisions about whether they can remain with the flock, whether their constant wandering puts others at risk. It feels wrong at first, cruel, like he is abandoning his duty, but slowly he sees the results. The flock grows stronger, more cohesive. The sheep learn to stay together, to respond to his voice, to avoid dangerous places. And he can sleep again. He can tend to all of them, not just the ones who demand his attention through crisis. One evening, a young shepherd from a neighboring village comes to him for advice. "My flock keeps wandering," the young man says. "I spend all my time searching for lost sheep. I'm exhausted." Dasan recognizes himself in the young man's face. "How many sheep do you have?" 40. "And how many wander regularly?" 3 or 4, the same ones over and over. "And the other 36, how are they?" The young shepherd looks confused. "They're fine, I suppose. I don't really have time to check on them. I'm always searching." Dasan nods. "I understand. I was the same. But let me ask you, this is your constant rescuing actually helping the ones who wander? Are they learning to stay safe? Or are they learning that wandering has no real consequences?" The young shepherd is quiet for a long time. "I never thought about it that way. The Buddha taught about skillful means," Dasan says. "About knowing when to act and when to wait, when to hold on and when to let go. Compassion is not just feeling, it is wisdom in action. It is caring in ways that truly help, not just in ways that make us feel good about ourselves." But what if a sheep dies because I didn't search hard enough? That is the risk, and it is painful. But what if all 40 sheep suffer because you exhausted yourself searching for one? What if you die of exhaustion and all 40 are left without a shepherd? Which is more compassionate, to risk one or to risk all? The young shepherd leaves troubled but thoughtful. Dasan watches him go and remembers his own journey from desperate rescuer to wise caretaker. It was not an easy path. It required him to accept limitations, to make difficult choices, to live with the discomfort of not being able to save everyone. But it also taught him something the Buddha knew, that true compassion must be balanced with wisdom. That caring for others cannot mean destroying yourself. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do is create conditions for people to learn and grow, rather than constantly rescuing them from the consequences of their choices. That night, he sits with his flock as stars emerge in the darkening sky. All 100 sheep are present, safe, healthy. His dogs rest nearby, alert but calm. The fences are strong. The fold is secure. And he is rested, present, able to truly care for them all. One lamb approaches him, nuzzles his hand. It is the one that used to wander constantly, the one he spent so many nights searching for. It has not wandered in weeks. It learned finally to stay with the flock, to trust the shepherd's voice, to avoid the thorny places. Dasan strokes its head gently. He did not save this lamb by constantly rescuing it. He saved it by teaching it to save itself, by creating conditions for safety rather than enabling dependence. This was harder than rescuing. It required more wisdom, more patience, more trust in the process. But it was he now understands true compassion. Compassion must be balanced with wisdom, or it becomes another form of suffering. We cannot save everyone, and trying to do so may prevent us from helping anyone effectively. The Buddha taught skillful means, knowing when to act and when to wait, when to rescue and when to let natural consequences teach. True care means creating conditions for safety and growth, not endless rescue. It means sustainable giving, not self-destruction. In this balance between an open heart and clear wisdom, we find the path that truly helps. The Lantern Bearer's Path. The traveller stands at the edge of a dark forest, her lantern casting a small circle of light on the ground before her. Beyond that circle, there is only darkness. The path ahead is invisible. The destination is 3 days away, but she cannot see even 3 steps forward. Her name is Nalini, and she has been traveling for weeks to reach the monastery in the mountains where her teacher waits. The letter came 2 months ago. Come when you are ready. The path will reveal itself. She thought she was ready. But now, standing at the forest's edge as night falls, she is not sure. She has a map, but it is useless in the dark. She has directions, but they assume daylight landmarks she can see. All she has that is useful is this lantern, and it illuminates only a few feet ahead. Fear whispers that she should wait for morning, wait for certainty, wait for enough light to see the whole journey before taking the first step. But something deeper calls her forward, a knowing that has no logic, a trust that has no evidence. She takes one step into the forest. The light moves with her, revealing the next step. Then another. The path appears beneath her feet as she walks it, never more than a few steps visible at once. The forest is dense, the darkness complete beyond her small sphere of light. She hears sounds, branches creaking, leaves, rustling, animals moving in the undergrowth. Each sound makes her heart race. Her mind creates dangers in the darkness, bandits, wild animals, cliffs she might walk off, wrong turns that will leave her lost forever. But the light shows her what is actually there, a route that would trip her, appearing just in time for her to step over it. A fork in the path becoming clear just as she reaches it. A stream to cross, revealed step by step as she approaches. Hours pass. Her legs ache. Her arm grows tired from holding the lantern. She stops trying to see ahead and focuses only on the ground illuminated before her. One step, then another. This step, then the next. Nothing more. She realizes something. If she could see the entire journey at once, every hill, every difficulty, every mile of dark forest she might never have begun. The not knowing is a gift. It keeps her present, attentive, focused on this moment, rather than overwhelmed by all the moments to come. Near midnight, she comes to a place where the path splits into 3 directions. Her map shows only one fork, not 3. She holds the lantern up, trying to see farther down each path. But the darkness reveals nothing. She must choose without knowing where any path leads. Fear rises in her throat. What if she chooses wrong? What if she walks for hours in the wrong direction? What if she becomes hopelessly lost? She stands there paralyzed by the need to know, to be certain, to make the right choice. And then she remembers her teacher's words, "The path will reveal itself." Not, "The path is already revealed." Not, "You will see the whole path clearly." But, "Will reveal itself." Present tense, ongoing step by step. She chooses the middle path, not because she knows it is right, but because she must choose something. She takes a step, then another. The path continues. It does not end in a cliff or a wall or a dead end. It simply continues one step at a time. An hour later, the 3 paths converge again. She laughs out loud, the sound startling in the silent forest. It did not matter which path she chose. They all led to the same place. All that mattered was that she kept walking. As the night deepens, she stops fighting the darkness. She stops trying to see farther than her light allows. She stops worrying about what might be ahead. There is only this. The small circle of light, the visible step, the act of placing one foot in front of the other. She begins to notice things she missed when she was anxious about the destination. The way the light catches on spider webs, turning them into strings of jewels. The sound of a stream somewhere nearby, constant and soothing. The smell of pine and earth. The cool air on her face. The rhythm of her own breathing matching the rhythm of her steps. She is not just walking through the forest. She is present in the forest part of it, moving through it with awareness rather than just trying to get past it. Near dawn, exhausted, she stops to rest. She sits with her back against a tree, the lantern beside her. She thinks about her life before this journey, how she was always planning, always trying to see the whole path, always needing to know how things would turn out before she would begin. How many things did she not do because she could not see the end from the beginning? How many paths did she not take because she demanded certainty before taking the first step? She thinks about her teacher's letter. "Come when you are ready." She thought being ready meant having a clear path, a good plan, enough resources. But maybe being ready just means being willing to take the first step without seeing the last one. As light begins to filter through the trees, she stands and continues walking. The lantern is less necessary now, but she keeps it lit. It has become a companion, this small light that showed her the way when everything else was dark. By midday, she emerges from the forest into open hills. She can see for miles now, the path winding ahead, the mountains, in the distance the monastery barely visible on a far peak. She could put out the lantern now. She does not need it in daylight, but she keeps it burning, remembering what it taught her, that we do not need to see the whole path to walk it faithfully. that light enough for the next step is light enough. On the third day, as the sun begins to set, she reaches the monastery gates. Her teacher is there waiting as if he knew exactly when she would arrive. "You made it," he says, smiling. "I almost didn't start. I couldn't see the path. And yet you walked it." "I could only see a few steps ahead. The whole way, I could only see a few steps." "Yes." Her teacher gestures for her to sit beside him on a stone bench. "This is what I wanted you to learn." The Buddha taught that the path to awakening unfolds gradually, insight by insight, step by step. He said, "Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment." Nalini nods understanding now. "If I had seen the whole journey at once, you might never have begun. Or you would have walked it with your mind always ahead, always worried about what was coming, never present with what is. The not knowing kept you here now aware. But how do we live like this? How do we make plans, prepare for the future if we cannot see ahead? We do what you did. We create the conditions, we bring a lantern, we study the map, we prepare as best we can. But then we trust the process. We take the step that is visible and trust that the next step will be revealed when we reach it. This is faith, not blind belief, but confidence, born from understanding that the path appears beneath our feet as we walk it. Her teacher stands and walks to the monastery gate. The Buddha compared the spiritual path to crossing a river, one stone at a time. You need not see the far shore to take the next step. You need only trust that the stone beneath your foot is solid, and that the next stone will be there when you need it. Nalini looks at her lantern still burning even in the fading daylight. "I thought I needed to see everything clearly before I could begin, but the lantern taught me that clarity comes from walking, not from waiting." Yes, and this is true not just for journeys through forests, but for every aspect of life. We want to see the whole path, the career, the relationship, the spiritual journey before we commit to the first step. But life does not work that way. Life reveals itself as we live it, not before. That evening, Nalini sits in the monastery garden, watching the sun set behind the mountains. She thinks about all the times she has stood at the edge of darkness waiting for enough light to see the whole path. All the opportunities she missed because she demanded certainty before beginning. She thinks about the forest, about how the path appeared beneath her feet, step by step, exactly when she needed it. Not before when she was anxious for reassurance. Not after when it would have been too late. But precisely when she needed it, as she walked. She realizes this is how everything works. This is how we learn, how we grow, how we find our way. Not by seeing everything at once, but by taking the visible step and trusting that the next will be revealed. Not by demanding the whole map before we begin, but by walking with whatever light we have. The lantern sits beside her, its flame steady in the still air. She does not need it now, but she will keep it close, this small light that taught her the greatest lesson, that we need not see the entire path to walk it faithfully. That light enough for the next step is light enough. That the journey reveals itself to those who begin it one step at a time. We need not see the entire path to walk it faithfully. Each step taken in awareness lights the next step forward. The Buddha taught that the path unfolds gradually, not all at once, but moment by moment, breath by breath. We prepare as best we can, then trust the process. We take the visible step and trust that the next will be revealed when we reach it. This is not blind faith, but wise trust confidence that the path appears beneath our feet as we walk it one small light at a time. And so our journey through these stories comes to rest. Thank you for walking this path with me, for opening your heart to these ancient teachings, for allowing these words to accompany you towards sleep. Through 11 stories, we've witnessed the same truth revealing itself in different forms. That peace comes not from grasping what we want or avoiding what we fear, but from meeting life as it is with open hands and quiet awareness. The Buddha taught, "You only lose what you cling to." The merchant lost his ships, but found freedom. The potter's bowl shattered, but revealed deeper beauty. The musician lost her hearing, but discovered silence as music's foundation. Each person learned to release their grip and found that what remained was enough. Thank you for being part of Buddhist Insight's journey. If these stories brought you peace tonight, consider subscribing so more Buddhist wisdom can find you each week. And if you know someone seeking rest, someone who might need these teachings, share this with them. Your support helps us continue bringing the Buddha's wisdom to those who need it most. These truths live in the small moments in the breath you take, when worry rises in the pause before reacting, in the gentle release of what you cannot control. Not lessons to memorize, but wisdom that reveals itself when you're ready to see. May you rest in deep peace. May you wake with gentle ease. May all beings everywhere find this same rest. Good night.